Hi, Jaswinder.
Hello, Stacy.
Trying to figure out where I put my coffee. I'm walking around my house like I know I had it.
Has it come to that time where you have to tie a piece of string to the coffee cup and put it around your neck so you don't lose it?
I mean, how many places could I have put it?
Yeah.
I think it's time to make a new cup.
Good idea.
It's weird. Not outside.
Sam hasn't left the house, but he's lost his phone.
He lost his phone.
That should read, I haven't left the house and I have lost my phone.
Check the couch cushions. Always the first place.
I don't have that problem.
Because
I keep the phone on the fireplace and there are no cushions on the couch.
okay, that makes it easy. This is weird though. I don't have that many places to look.
Maybe Doug knows.
No, nothing.
Do you know where I put my coffee? That's the question of the day.
On the roof of your car?
No, I'm in the house. I'm in the house and I've checked every room. Multiple times. Okay, new cup. Oh, here. Is that it? Ah, got it. Okay, do I have to plug in? I think I'm good.
So how are you all?
The weather's turned in the UK. It's very cloudy, very heavy cloud. It's a high pressure But it's cold high pressure. That's unusual. So I expect a storm pretty soon. It's making me feel kind of heavy, man. Otherwise, it's good. Hasn't slowed the kids down any. How is that possible?
I didn't hear your last question. How is what possible?
High pressure, high atmospheric pressure has slowed me down, makes me feel heavy. But it hasn't slowed the kids. They're running around like normal, kind of, We are doing things and we want things to do, entertain us, that sort of thing. I seem to
It's
remember.
actually an interesting.
Sorry, your turn.
No, I was just going to say that's actually an interesting question.
It's because they're not aware of these things. Their mind is preoccupied by little things like toys and do this and do that. And she's taken that from me and I want it back. That sort of thing. And is the food ready? What do you want to eat? Pizza! I seem to remember I was just the same. It didn't matter whether it was raining, too hot, food ready or not. Time to play. Yeah, I'm ready.
So Jazz, when you check the weather, like, on a TV or equivalent, if you ever do, when you check the weather, do you always also check the barometric pressure?
No, I look out of the window and that tells me what it's like. And that's
your own system.
Yes.
That's my system too.
I like that.
Monday morning, I woke up at 6 a.m. Looked out of the blinds without opening them, and I could see rays of sunlight coming in. So after 4 days of gloom and weather, it looked to me like we might have 4 or 5 days of good weather, and we did. It's just relying on information stored over several decades. And it's quite reliable, good enough for me at any rate.
Welcome, Colin. Josh, how are things there?
He hasn't woken up. He hasn't put his mic and camera on because he's waking up.
Always good.
That's from the chat. Uh-oh, looks like he's awake.
I love that Josh Spender's in tune with me. Yes, it's Sunday, and yes, I am in bed, and yes, the weather looks good, and happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. Happy Mother's Day, Stacy.
Thank you.
And yeah, all is good. I'm supposed to go into town today, and I decided to go tomorrow because I think there'll be less people, just to be trying to make my mom feel good so I don't bring any COVID back in here, wear my mask and do all that kind of good stuff. So, yep, all's good up here. Thanks for asking, Doug. How are you doing?
Good. There was a Mother's Day gathering of the clan, and it was over at somebody else's house. So it was really nice to go and have a brunch and put a dish in a sink and come home. So yeah, but I'm in a good place. And
That's
I'm
good.
complete.
The dogs are good. How are the dogs doing?
The dogs are doing great. They're just, they see sister-in-law and it's like a rabbit. Might as well be a rabbit. So yeah, they'll go crazy until somebody walks in the house, completes the pack.
Nice.
I'll mute my mic so you guys aren't getting barked out of existence.
I do have to ask, where was the coffee, Stacy? I was curious about that mystery.
Big mystery. It was behind a picture frame. I've been moving stuff around, so I had to set it down.
I've done that. I know exactly how that works. The wrong angle, you just can't see it. It's disappeared.
Exactly. I was about to check the refrigerator, but found it.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It's probably in the refrigerator or inside. I was gonna say check the bathroom. Like maybe it's behind. Like you started to go into the bathroom with it. Yeah.
I did.
Okay.
Colin, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing okay. I'm got a busy day, busy week. It's for work, family. It's Mother's Day celebrations today. So I'm trying to get my stuff together and working late, trying to get code in before code freeze. So it's been very productive and busy, but everything seems to be going in the right direction.
What does code freeze mean?
A code freeze is what you do to plan for making a release of software. So you freeze the code so nobody can change it. So they have a stable set of code to test.
Got it. Thank you.
So like that's like trying to get your essay done in time, so it doesn't get penalized for late marks. But yeah, in software, it's pretty complicated stuff. So yeah, very fun 3D point cloud trash main mesh kind of work. So yeah, interesting stuff.
Can't hear you, Doug.
Oh, I asked, so what's the deadline?
It's sprint number 4, and they're going to. We had a bit of an extension, so we got to beat down a lot of bugs and a lot of things. So essentially, it's a culmination of quite a long period of development. So they're going to be releasing it, I think, in another week or so, 2 weeks. Yep.
Very cool. So has anyone come bearing any like glaringly clear, obvious blocks?
Well, I think Colin and I have had a block ongoing for many, many months, probably getting on for 2 years now. And it seems to me every Saturday we have a clash, as we did last week, this week, the week before. Can't remember 4 weeks ago what happened then. And he seems to think that maybe we should have a one-to-one, which we tried several times. And now I'm refusing to have a one-to-one with Colin. But I don't mind having it out for a discussion with everybody present, so everybody knows what's going on.
Yeah, that sounds good, actually. Because all I want is civility and to have proper intentions. That's all. because I think everybody has good intentions, but sometimes people can push. And so you have to make sure you're doing that in the right way where it's something that's wanted. Like, this is an interesting space where we're giving all kinds of advice, some asked for, some not. So, and it also kind of blurs the lines between supportive or critique, and it's quite a dance in this forum where there's not a whole lot of time. So I think that's my biggest complaint, is if you're going to get into something, give it the appropriate amount of time. Sound bites just don't do it. And I think that even though we do a bit of a more extended talk here, it still doesn't seem to be adequate to get into the meat of some of the misunderstandings. So I think it's more that than anything.
Is that the total sum of your complaint? Colin?
Well, there's more minor things like behavioral things, but I'm not here to control how someone's going to behave. So. But I do have my own standards of how I like to engage. So if it gets to a point where you're progressing along, aligning with somebody, and you want to share more, then you have to look those things over. How intimate do you become with somebody?
Do you remember the accusations you hurled at me yesterday?
Yeah. Well, actually, what I was trying to say yesterday was how do we flag a misdirected provocation, or is it misdirected?
So, are you saying I provoked you?
Oh, several times, but it's really petty stuff.
Good. Could you run through it, the provocations you felt?
Well, let's veer back to Doug for a minute. I think we're going a long way down a road, which is interesting, but nonetheless, I do have to concentrate on getting ready. But I can go a little further with you. But let's give back to Doug and see what Doug, as a host, thinks we should do.
Well, I mean, you guys are answering the question, right? I provoked the question. I said, who's got the block? So yeah, let's clear it for both of you.
Okay, well, I'm willing to.
A short exercise in collective wisdom.
Yeah, no, well, yeah, it's not something I want to belabor too much. It's more the fact that I think there's a few lines of action that happen generally or can be directed at me specifically, and I'm accused of being oversensitive and trying to rebuke or rebut or defend or whatever. If that's coming from the Doug place of fear, I think it's coming from the fear of miscommunication, misunderstanding, misrepresentation, and that's quite important to me in this space, is trying to be understood. And it's a hard thing to do. So when people start to lecture and lay down what they're saying, sometimes some of that stuff can trigger, or at least need to be checked or contextualized, because sometimes things in a larger context are good modes of thinking, and where if you try to apply it to everything, it doesn't anymore. And one of the big ones was, we've come across is there a purpose? Is there a reason for things, right? As a large question, that's an interesting question, but when you get down to actual nuts and bolts, it's usually some kind of practical application or some scientific, this needs to be checked, whatever. So, whatever context you're talking on. So I think that's a big part of it, is just the flow of the conversations are so wide ranging with such large swaths of meaning getting into what is being, what is zero. So, you can have friendly conversations about that. I think maybe to ground it back to the conflict and block is when somebody says, well, I know why that is, and they start to assume, and then, maybe I'll push back on that somewhat. And if someone's leaning into the challenge and wants to explain themselves and has the time to, then it usually goes fairly well. If somebody just wants to say, well, you don't know, you haven't experienced, blah, 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 and they brush you off, and, I don't take to that. And I feel like from jazz, I do get judged and schooled in ways because, he has a certain large body of knowledge that he wants to transfer. And I don't think this is the right forum or space to do it. It just doesn't work well. And as well, when we talked one-on-one, same thing, turns into a lecture. And I didn't sign up for a course in jazzology. At the same time, it would be really good if a lot of those lessons and nuggets could be gemified and shared at the same time. Doesn't need my critique and my criticism to bring them down. Just when it crosses my path, I don't think we have a really good way to disagree convivially or disagree well. So I think that's a large part. And and jazz is this provoker. So I challenge that. Like, do you need to provoke people, and when do you need to be controversial, and in what context? That's a big thing as well. I think of a specific thing about a Barbie that was posted one time that I challenged, because I just couldn't see the reason of what that was in our playground. But anyway, I'll just leave it there. That's quite a long rant.
I think it's always wise to respond when you have your views challenged, especially if they're long-held beliefs that have meaning, that give meaning to your life. If somebody challenges those, you've got a right to respond in a meaningful, polite manner, without interrupting the person. Just wait for your turn, and then speak your piece. Because it's bullying if you just jump on somebody's conversation and break it in mid-sentence to interrupt. I don't think that's a intelligent or responsible, civil way to behave. It's not respectful of the conversation.
Sometimes.
Yeah, well, you do it often, Colin. You're a disruptor. You're not generating positive input to the conversation because of the disruption that it causes when you interrupt.
Well, that's your opinion.
Well, you've got a right to have your opinion. You've got to be right. When Jazz Winder gives you a lecture, you don't like it and you turn off because you're right and he's wrong. And the problem is, a mind convinced against its will is of the same opinion still. So that's why I don't try and lecture people that I know have a diametrically opposed view. That's nothing's going to convince them except their own experience. So it's
so therefore there's nothing to talk about, right?
Well, no, there's something to talk about, but there's a way to talk about it. You don't bully other people and jump on interrupting them. It's violent.
I think
uncalled for.
There's an escalation, like right now. I think
it's a disruption.
Yeah, but you're just gonna.
I'll continue until I say.
Yeah, I know.
I'm complete or over, and then you can jump in. That's when you can jump in. You can jump in then.
Well, I think you're bullying now.
Well, it's not. It's just the way we've decided to behave.
You've escalated. I agree with what your point is, totally. But there's certain conversations where you need to not interrupt.
Well, but you're disrupting the conversation when you do it.
Well, conversations change, and there's different kinds of conversations.
But there's only one kind of disruption. And that's refusing to abide by the traditional method of operation.
Well, there is none.
Yes, there is. There's always a mode of operation, a modus operandi.
And what would that be?
It'd be, for you, it'd be disrupting the conversation to go along with your point of view, jumping in and interrupting people while they're trying to speak.
Well, again, that's your opinion.
Well, let's go around the room and ask.
I never said I wouldn't interrupt. I said if the conversation, there's many conversations I have where I don't interrupt. It's got to be an escalation.
We want meaning in unblocking. So we listen to each other.
Well,
It's
misunderstanding.
the only way we're going to make progress
Right.
on
So
unblocking your issue. The interruption is not a good thing to have in a conversation. It pushes people away.
that's your opinion.
Well, ask Tammy Lee Meyer. She came out and told me that you said things about me she couldn't repeat online.
Well, you know what? Maybe that's true. Maybe it's not, but it's not something I might not repeat to you myself.
Maybe not true. See, that's a non sequitur.
I don't know what you're talking about with Tammy, but the thing of the matter is,
You said it may be not true, it may be true. It's a non sequitur.
What I'd like from Colin. Hello, Heiner. Sorry, you haven't been updated. We've had our little check-ins. Doug asked the question if anybody had anything that they wanted to bring up to unblock, and I volunteered that. Colin and I have been at loggerheads for a considerable length of time, and it was time to resolve the situation. So I've asked Colin to list, just from yesterday. You have something to say, Heiner? Yeah, check in if you want to.
He's just setting up his camera.
Okay. So I'm still waiting for Colin to list the items. I will jog his memory a little bit. One of his accusations from yesterday and otherwise is that I put words into other people's mouths. So he said that yesterday distinctly. And the context from yesterday is Fallon did the moderating and he came in with several questions. He came in with something that he wanted discussing, which we did. And I had a fairly good input into that. The other thing that Colin accused me of yesterday, I don't really want to tell him these things. I want him to tell me the things he accused me of himself, because I suspect he doesn't remember. It's kind of like an automatic sequence he's got, and he just blurts it out. And he did the same thing the Saturday or the Sunday previous with Stacy. He accused Stacy. Stacy made a statement or so, and then Colin did the same thing that he did yesterday with me. And I want him to remember that sequence and accuse me again, because I suspect he doesn't remember. And I really would like a clarification on that. I'm complete for now.
You're muted, Doug.
Colin, do you want to respond or do you want to stop?
He's muted. I don't know.
Yeah, I
He's
don't know whether.
muted. He says he's muted.
There we go. I thought it was a forced moment of silence. That's happened before. This is always interesting.
No.
So, yeah, no, I do remember what I jumped on yesterday because there's a couple of things that I'm keeping my eye on as far as Jazz and I to try to resolve this. And one of them is what I mentioned is about the tactic of conversation, and I think he's used it on me, and I don't appreciate it, which is trying to be provocative. And I'm saying, where is that line, and how do you accept signals from somebody that you may be, going across one of their boundaries, being provocative, or do you care? What is the purpose? How do you respond to people who say that's not appropriate? Do you just say, oh, you're not appreciating what I'm saying, or do you just go quiet and let the dust fly and see who fights with who? Like, I don't know. If you're playing a game, I don't appreciate it on what you're up to. And again, this stuff is all petty, and I mentioned it. And you want to do it online, if that's the way you feel, that's fine. I suggested we do it with Sam because Sam's seen a lot of it, and I think Sam actually is a pretty good person for being a moderator. But yeah, I think I do get into it by defending myself, and you can ask Stacy about when I said she put words in my mouth. We discussed that.
When did I provoke you yesterday is the question.
You didn't provoke me until you started
Ah.
over talking me like Alex just did.
And why did I overtalk you?
Well, you accused me of first of all, you came right on me and you started to say, I was telling Fallon such and such, and you're telling me that I'm saying this. I said, I'm not trying to say you're saying anything. And then you said, oh, okay. You jumped on me to clarify that. That's the first thing I remember, because I was fully off and just saying what I just said, which is the same question I just asked you. How does one interact with you so that when you're in a provocative mode?
When did I provoke you yesterday? I didn't provoke you at all.
No, you were talking about doing it. And I said, when?
I wasn't even talking with you.
You were saying it's a tactic that you use, so I'm questioning you on something you say you do.
You didn't question me.
Okay, whatever. I think that's the end of this round. If you don't understand what I'm talking about.
No, it's not the end. You can't decide when it's the end of the round. Because
go back and watch.
You just back out of something and that's the end of it. And then you'll do it again. If I made a comment, if I'm talking with Fallon, and I was talking with Fallon, I didn't ask for you to clarify what I'd said to Fallon.
I wasn't.
So if I'm saying something to Fallon, what gives you the right to do what you accuse me of doing, to sit in judgment and say, I can't say things like that?
Well, during your share with Fallon, you mentioned some things in passing that I wanted further clarification on, because I see that as being a source of some of the things that we have, that if we had a way to communicate that, like when I
ask me anything, you jumped in and started making accusations. They were specific accusations to me.
No, hold on. For instance, yesterday you were saying that you don't have any gems that you want to go back and find. You just flow in the moment and you say all kinds of things and just, ask me something and I'll tell you something. I don't really have anything specific that I want to say.
No, I didn't say anything like that.
Something like that.
It's not even anything remotely like that. You see,
Yeah.
this is what you do. Is you take.
No, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I'm saying that's what I heard. 'Cause
But
that's what
how
I
can you hear things when they're not being said?
well, we can clarify them.
Can you remember the specific accusations you made?
Well, for example, I can think of actual things that have happened. Like, for example, the atheist Barbie doll. I think that one was pretty clear cut. Like, what was that about?
Nothing to do with yesterday. We're dealing with the
No, well,
as
yes,
you
it does.
said,
Yes,
the
it does. Yes, it
context
does.
is from yesterday.
Yeah, well, yesterday I asked you if you post something like the Barbie doll, and I don't
No, you
like.
didn't. You didn't ask me that
Yeah,
one.
I asked you,
yesterday.
if you do something provocative, how do I continue with you
I
in?
think Alex wants to say something. He wants time out. Alex?
What time is it? 12:30.
Anyway, as far as I can see, Colin, Stacey, all yours.
Yeah, I just want to say, I think that a better way to handle this would be to go back to the videotape, both of you, and find your parts, and let's just look at it. Because to just keep going back, it just makes no sense to me.
I think that's a very good idea. And I did suggest that to Colin yesterday. And he took umbrage at that too. I did suggest, I'll see if I can remember what I said exactly. Yeah, that if he went back and perused or had a look at the section towards the end of the session where just after I stopped talking with Fallon and he started interpreting what I'd said, he would find really succinctly whatever he's accusing me of and whatever he's saying, he has answered his own queries in that short time that he talked at me. Now, he does that several times. He does pose a sort of a scenario, and then he goes on to explain it. So he does answer his own questions. My contention is to him that he doesn't listen to himself. He has no recollection of his own conversations with himself. And therefore, he does it again and again. And I reasonably think that he shouldn't be doing it again and again. There's something not quite right there. I'm complete.
It's very interesting, that reflection. About going back in the videos, I don't have any problems going back and looking at what had happened. And I also suggest that several times, although I think it's better to look forward and understand and try to straw man as opposed to, or steel man as opposed to straw man somebody. It takes time.
All your standard blockages or deflections, straw man, metal man, this.
No, I think it's important. I think it's important because it goes to misunderstanding.
It's off the shelf junk.
It's not. If I ask you a question, what do you mean? That's better than telling you.
Yesterday, did you say, oh yeah, that'd be a good idea. Let's have a look at this from yesterday.
No, I find
rather you wanted to do another one-to-one session. I want it up today. So
yeah.
On
There's
record.
3 weeks ago, we butted heads, and you start to lecture to me. I think that's kind of how it feels to me. It's like you're lecturing to me, and that's after maybe I ask a question and interrupt or do whatever. So it's not like all the time you're just coming and attacking me. I'm not saying that.
3 weeks ago, your comment was that when you talked with me previously and that you didn't know something, and I started to fill in the background information. Yeah, I get this quite a lot with you. There's lots of things I've come to the conclusion that you don't know. And you give off-the-shelf stock answers.
I totally agree.
Rather than tell you that you're ignorant of something, I sort of make it my business to give it to you.
No, that's
you
fine.
Don't do any research.
Is it the appropriate time? And is it the appropriate tact? you might not see that I'm not receiving it well. And besides, I'm already talking about something else, which you might have dismissed. So we need two maps of discernment. I'm saying I'm talking about this, and you can say, well, I'm talking about this. And I said, okay, well, let's start having a conversation and track the conversation, because it goes all over, Timbuktu, the conversations. They're not.
It could go all the way to Timbuktu for all I care.
Well, I don't have
because
time. I don't have
You're the one
time for
who
that.
loses track, and you're doing it again today.
Well, we were talking about sustainability, and you wanted to go back and talk about from
No,
beginning to zero again.
I'm talking about the complaints you levied at me yesterday. That's all
My
I want to
my
talk
complaints
about
are it's
in the
hard to talk with you.
context of yesterday.
Yeah, my complaint is it's hard to talk with you when you have a provocative technique that you enjoy to use.
Okay? When did I provoke you yesterday?
I think you made reference to using these kinds of tools and these tactics. And I said,
That
when is it?
wasn't to you.
No, that's fine.
You don't know how to use that tool.
Regardless, Jazz, that's my gripe. It's leaning into things with sincerity.
When you have a gripe, it would be kind of good if it's put forward succinctly.
Yeah, well,
And if I'm talking to somebody else, how come you can sit in judgment and I can't sit in judgment on you?
okay, well, let's turn this around and instead of talking about what I don't like, let's talk about what I envision that I do like. Maybe this would mean something to you, maybe it won't. I don't know. But I envision a conversation at depth with someone like you or Doug or Sam or anybody who has a message or a deepness that they are trying to share, and give it the appropriate space, because I get really confused and I ask a lot of questions. And if you get upset with my ignorance, then the conversation, or you want to use provoking styles to see if you can get me to learn quicker, I don't go for that. So I would like to see a nice space, for example, the conversation about religion. Like, I think there's several things we do agree on.
Okay, that sounds good to me.
Yeah,
So
but the thing is, we have to have an appropriate space and appropriate time, and not the quips and not the peanut gallery coming in and
when
whatever.
would be a good time then, in your opinion?
Well, I don't know. I think we've been trying to set one up with Sam, but that's an interesting.
No, you're saying things that have no meaning.
No, well, Sam wants to.
I haven't been trying to set up anything with anybody. Every time you've suggested in the last 6 months or so, sorry, 3-4 months or so, that we have a private conversation with or without Sam, I'll give you some leeway there. I've refused. Yesterday I refused again.
Yeah, well, that's fine. What I'm
So
saying
where do you get these things from?
two different conversations. Two different conversations. One conversation is to try to resolve the conflict where we feel we're trying to step on each other's toes, which isn't my intention. So I think we should be able to resolve that, because I think a lot of this stuff is petty, and I point to it with the provocative, gamery. And if it was appropriate,
I don't provoke you intentionally. You provoke yourself. You take something that I have said to somebody else in a very deep conversation that you didn't understand, and you're of the opinion that I should not make such statements.
Okay, that's one conversation.
Right.
Then the other conversation.
Yesterday, and you had a go at me saying I was sitting in judgment. What gives you the right to sit in judgment of me when I don't have that right in your opinion?
No, I was trying to ask you a question, which is how do
No, you didn't.
Yeah, I want to know, how do I deal with you when you want to be provocative? Do I just ignore you, or do I expect an answer?
Now, are you asking me that now?
No, because that's the other, and the other conversation is about religion, and that conversation is an ongoing one about not seeing eye to eye on some of these deep issues.
You've got 3 items there. Which one do you want me to?
I would like to leave them out. One is just just personal differences between you and I, and our style of speaking to each other. How do we not talk past each other, piss each other off? Number 2 is during the barn raising meetings, or this one, if we start talking about religion, I'm suggesting the talk about religion and my opinion of it or any of that stuff would be much better treated separately. And I don't like to talk about it during these shows because I don't think it's appropriate. I've learned that, that subject, if any, needs a lot of a room to breathe. And so I suggested to Sam, and Sam agreed, because Sam's interested as well in this topic, that there could be something done there. So that's a much larger conversation I'm trying not to have squeezed into a barn raising Saturday, the one I want to take part in. If you guys want to do that, I'll take part in it, but I think it's a missed opportunity.
You lost me way ago. You bring up a topic or a subject, which it is in this case. You've done it all by yourself now.
Well, the religion one isn't just about you.
You brought up religion. You're talking about religion, and you don't want anybody to say anything.
Not during the Saturday and Sunday, because I think it's time wasted and it pollutes the space. Small talk maybe, but
who's wasting the time, Colin?
I'm saying it hasn't worked for me. How's it working for you?
Everything works for me because I don't shy away from anything.
That was a rhetorical question.
I'm fairly knowledgeable across almost everything, and if I'm not, I go and do the research.
Well, that's fine. So, I think I'm at the point where I feel like I've been heard. I have two issues with you. One, how do I talk with you when you're provocative? Do I expect an answer or not? And the other one is about religion, which isn't just about you, but it's about that topic that you, I, and Sam and other people.
Let me ask you this question then. How many religions are you familiar with?
Well, again, I don't want to get into that, but.
No, we're not going to get into it. Just give me an answer. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. How many do you know about?
The Abrahamic ones or non-Abrahamic?
How many of the non-Abrahamics? Name them.
Hindu, Buddhism, but it's not really a religion. There's Sikh, Muslim, which I think is actually Islam. But that's confusing. They got some really nasty ideas. But my quip was not with my knowledge of religion. My quip is with how it blocks one from being able to think for themselves.
It blocks you. It doesn't block others.
It depends how literally you take it. And that's where I think we have an agreement.
It's blocking you.
No, I think we have an agreement that it doesn't block us.
Judgment and say, well, I don't want to talk about religion because it blocks you. Who are you referring to? Everybody except you?
No, I'm talking about people use religion to implement authority over.
Well, politics is used as authority. All systems of governance are authoritative.
Yeah, but it's based on lies, in my opinion.
Everything is based on lies.
Well, anyway, we've cracked the nut on that. So, again, the idea is that it's not about you having or anybody having a personal belief that makes them feel good, because who knows, maybe they've tapped into some reality truth that I don't know about. On the other hand, as a society and a history, personally, I try to tend towards humanism, which is kind of like the best of Christianity without the woo. And as far as defining an atheist, that's another conversation, which I take a bit of offense when people actually try to put properties or behaviors and associate it to an atheist when you can't associate behaviors to an atheist, because an atheist is a standpoint against understanding something, not actually making a claim of understanding of anything. You have to be a humanist or a Christian or a Buddhist to do that. So you have to have some type of belief.
I don't know what is.
Well, I'm just saying those are things that we could unpack, but I think we are wasted here. But it's
no, Colin, I'm going to do what you do. Those are things you need to unpack. I've already unpacked them long time ago.
Well, I would enjoy having a conversation, unpacking that with people who are interested in it, and I think it's a long conversation. And I think a lot of times
other people is not me, Colin. The conversation today is you and me.
Well, no, well, I'm just saying there's two conversations, and one of them.
I'm
that you-
saying there's one conversation, and that's you and me.
Right, and I'm saying the religion one, I would like to offload to a larger
I'm
forum.
not sure I want to talk about religion with you. I've tried it.
That's fine.
I
That's fine.
even
Don't
gave
come
you
then.
a pointer.
That's fine.
Joshua's got his hand up, by the way.
I just congratulate you guys for unblocking and getting to the point, because I think you guys just nailed it right there. I just want to, just before it goes off into another direction, and I know both of you guys, I've had one-on-one conversations with both of you guys, and it's a very different line of thinking, and I think you guys nailed it. That's all I wanted to say. Continue, please.
Thank you. So I don't actually know what Joseph means by that exactly. Yes, we are two different entities, and we have two different ways of lining up our little objectives and presenting them. And quite frankly, I'm of the opinion the way I present them is the way it ought to go, as succinctly and as tightly as possible. No room for maneuver. If you've got too much room for maneuver, you're asking for trouble.
Well, I do have one still burning curiosity, and that's a lot of it's curiosity for me, and trying to fill in the truth, and what do I have time to chew on, and what space and forum is it, effective. Some things are, you go round and round in circles in some forums, and other forums you might be able to get somewheres, but that's the dance of communication. But I have this big question, and it comes back to, and this is I feel very similar to what I was trying to say yesterday, barn raising. How, or should I, and I think this goes back to Josh nailing it, if you don't want to be part of the religion conversation that's extended and moved outside of barn raising, then so be it, that's fine. It's just that I don't find it very useful in trying to give my opinion in these forums, I've learned, because it's everybody's got one. So
do you understand what you've just said?
Yeah, but the thing is I am interested in following up
You're
with certain
saying
people.
you don't want to have a conversation because it doesn't interest you.
Yeah,
And that
yeah.
if it should be done, it should be done somewhere else. So in a
No,
way, you're saying it should be done.
No, I think it's like could be a 3 or 4 hour conversation, and it might only be interesting to 3 or 4 people. That's what I'm saying. So why take everybody's attention? But the thing I'm interested in, specifically between me and you, to
I
get back
don't know. You're making statements on other people's behalf, and
What did I
nobody's
say?
objecting so far.
I think you said you don't want to have a religious conversation with me. So if me and Sam get together with some other people, you don't want to be.
I agree with you. You're the one who brought it up today, and you're the one who keeps telling me things about it. All I wanted to know was how many religions you're familiar with. So you mentioned about 5.
Yeah, I'll ask that.
Of those 5, you said 1, in your opinion, is not a religion. That's sufficient for me to come to the conclusion. I really don't want to talk with you about those, any of those.
Well, that's fine.
No knowledge worth exploring.
In fact, you would do well in that conversation to fill in that area of significance that could be missing. But the deal is, Sam and I have more of an angle that we're interested in how religion actually blocks or hinders.
I think you'll find that Sam. No, I'm not going to go into the land of.
No, I could be wrong. I could be wrong, but. For instance, he said yesterday, now I don't know how provocative this is for other people, but he did say yesterday, if God does speak to people, he speaks to them through science. Now, I don't know if that provokes people, but I kind of think that that's kind of poetic.
Why should science provoke anybody? I'm as scientific as the next man, if not more so. And
well, it comes down
to infer that religions are not scientific, and that they don't use empirical evidence, or that religions don't understand people and populations, are ignorance. And the biggest ignorance that comes out of it is twofold. One is religions cause war. 2, religions are used to control people. Well, so is every other system. I don't see anything that's any different with or without religion. And everything, every system that we talk about has its uses. So all
And-
those statements, which are stock statements, we can put them in your cocked hat and kick them about because they don't mean anything. It
Okay,
talks
well,
about
that's
it's
that's
sheer
fine.
kind of like, I've said that, and that is a true statement. That's it.
Yeah, okay, well, that's great. And that's why I say, like, in conversations like today, I just let that go around the table, and anybody, I don't really feel like commenting on that anymore. Just like you don't feel commenting on, but on a deeper conversation, I think we could bite into something where we could, you know, form something. I'm going to turn the page now because that's the religion one, and it does come up, and it is, you are a very opinionated gentleman who can be provocative, and it's hard to know how to wrestle with you. So I'm just saying, you know, you know, we could do it better. And so I'm asking questions like yesterday, how do we do it better? And to fill in that hole one more time, I'm damn curious about your response to me, not if you intended the message for me, but your response to me once you knew I was offended by posting that atheist Barbie thing. And look, I can take humor as much as anybody else. I'm just saying, what the hell were you thinking? And I never got a reply.
Okay, I'll refer you to something else that I found that really offended you was when I said that Trump was a bit of a dickhead and I could do better than him.
Yeah, well, forget about that. That's ridiculousness.
No,
I'm
no,
more
no,
interested in
no,
the
no.
Barbie.
You can't decide the parameters of the conversation because you're going way back
Trump is
2
just
years
bad.
ago
Trump is just bad.
and bring up something that I put up 2 years ago, and I can't even remember the context of what the heck was going on
Yeah,
at that time and
I
why.
have no dog in that fight. Whatever you're talking about, I have no dog in that fight. But the one with the atheist and the Barbie doll, that one stuck out because that was played out in front of a lot of people on the GCC. And you know,
I hope all
there's a bunch of
billions
people.
saw that.
There was a bunch of people asking what you meant, and I don't think an answer ever came. In fact, I'd refer back to Doug if he remembers that, and if
Nobody except you was asking me what it meant.
Doug, do you remember that?
I do.
Well, we've been at it an hour. I hope that's entertaining for everybody. I think it was somewhat useful for me, but I don't see any need to continue on. But if you want to open it up to other people, maybe that would be good. But
I never closed it.
I'm going to be in transit, so I will stick on the call though.
Okay.
Very kind of you.
So what did everybody see? Alex? Alex, go ahead. You raised your hand.
You're muted.
You're muted, Alex.
Oh, you can't unmute?
Now it's working.
There you go.
I noticed a development happening there when the two people involved in the conversation started hearing each other out. The conversation began to flow in a better direction, more focused. But when they were tit for tat, butting in with each other, tit for tat, blah, blah, one and then the other, 3 words and then 4 words, then 2 words and then 3 words, that was hard to follow. And not only was it hard to follow, it didn't seem to make much progress in resolving any issues at all. It was just a tit for tat. It was, a waste of time. The people observing find it difficult to watch. So that's over. That's it.
Josh, I think you were next.
Sure. Yeah, I just see different logical paths of thinking. And as far as this is my own perception of Colin's logic, is it's very logical. It's if that, then this. If Buddhism is a religion, then it's a religion. But if it's not, it's not. And it's a very binary type of going down the logic line. So if it's this way, then it's that way. If it's this way, then it's that way. And I also see Joss Winder going, okay, well, what way do you want it to be? Meaning, like, let's break out of this logic path and let's get to the heart of what it is. And it's just different ways of communicating, different ways of understanding and taking in the world. And I thought, it was quite interesting when Joss Winder said, how many religions do you know? Because that is the crux of the provocativeness that I see, is if Joss Winder is trying to get to another point down Colin's logic thread, he's asking, okay, well, let's get here. But before we can get here, let's go through what you know. And then that's where it turns into a lecture and provocative and all this type of thing. And Colin's not signing up for that. He's just trying to figure out what it is that we're trying to get to. So to get to here and go through all those logic steps, Joss Winder's like, hey, let's just jump over here. Let me tell you these things that you don't know, and then get to here for the conversation. And Colin's like, hey, don't tell me what you know. Let me figure that out through those steps so I can figure it out. And that's, to me, something that happens a lot with a lot of conversations is, okay, well, when you get there, come back to me. And not meeting each other in the middle and giving a hand up or a hand down in the knowledge world, in the ignorant, because I think it's really hard to admit that we don't know certain things. And
Actually, that's really beautiful,
is,
Josh. I interrupt you right there. I think you have captured it. And in essence, to respect everybody's standpoint and vector of conversation, you need to actually map that. And you actually need to say, well, let's get back to your point. I'm going to concede mine. But if you don't actually have a graphic in front of you, the stuff just disappears like clouds. So that's why it takes time, interruption, to actually get into that, where we're going with this conversation, because there's time to fill it all in if necessary, and people can give précis, but during barn raising or unblocking, I think you can just mention that we have a problem that we would like to spend more time to map out. And that was, that is the essence of kind of my being here, is to have that difficult conversation with Jazz, where he doesn't feel he's being slighted in making his points, but he might be delayed in the amount of time and when he can actually make those points. And if it starts to get into mockery, then that's another analysis. Hold up the mockery flag. How did we get here? Is somebody not being sincere anymore? Like, why? As somebody closed down and closed-minded, and the only tool you have now to alert the world that something smells is to use humor and mockery, because that's getting into the realm of bullying. Or are you defending? So these are standpoints that start to get more heated, and it just seems to go right to there. The map catches on fire and another Saturday's over. And so I'm just saying, I don't want to do that anymore. If you're not going to have a real conversation with me where we can logically respect both people's standpoints and agree, whether we're going to actually spend an hour and talk about zero or something, because Jazz and I definitely got off and trying to agree with what we were going to talk about. I think Stacy and I have had some interesting conversations where we have managed to steer, and it's been, I think we're quite satisfied with some of our recent conversations where, we talk about difficult, controversial type things at times. So, and I think it's best to get over the pettiness and stop the provoking games and splashing in the shallow end when there's a whole deep end of things to discuss and get into. I'm not intentionally provoking anybody. I'm searching, I'm querying, and if I go to mockery, well, maybe I shouldn't do that in this forum until I had time to unpack it in another one.
One would be more interesting conversation than zero. Because when you talk about zero, it's a representational symbol that represents nothing. So talk about one, the power of one. That would be a good topic. Over.
I'll just share what I know about zero. Is in the computer world, it actually kind of represents one. I don't know if you meant it that way, Colin, but you start at zero and then you go. So sometimes zero is one in some people's logic. I'm just letting you know, in the computer world, zero is a one. But that's again, just to my point, is that there's different lines of thinking, and I've known Colin for a while, and you're a very logical thinker, which when we get into the atheist conversation, I can have that conversation with you because I go to the logical point, not to the experiential point, which is two different ways to tackle religion. Is how many religions have you experienced versus how much have you read that is logical or illogical. And I did hear you say that the Muslim religion has some very awful thinking around Islam. And I thought the same way for a long time. Islam is very weird to me until I actually read the text, until I took the Quran and had a translation and started reading it and interpreted it for myself. Because when other people interpret it for me, it's really weird. But when I read it for myself and dived into it myself and had my own interpretation, and then spent time with people that practice that religion and had them interpret it, it had a better understanding from the books that I read. So it's different. Knowledge is experience versus what I've read. And actually experiencing a religion is very different than reading about a religion, because I've read a lot about Catholicism. My mom went to Catholic church and told me a lot of shitty things. And then I went to a church in Goa, India, and went to a Easter Sunday Catholic religious ceremony, and it was beautiful, and I enjoyed the heck out of it. And I, as a religion, I'm not a huge fan of the Catholic religion. I actually don't like it at all. But I had some great experiences in a Catholic church. Also in Santa Barbara, a friend of mine had to go to church because his parents told him, and I went to the church, went to the ceremony, and it was really wonderful. I enjoyed the heck out of it. So it's different experiencing versus reading versus this is what I know, this is what I know. That can go on forever, but the experience is a whole different thing. And I'll just leave it at that. About any subject, experience versus the logic of what you read. It's very different. I'm complete. I'm curious to know what other people's thoughts are, either Stacy or Doug, or if you want to expand, Alex, just on these, not so much about Joss Winder and Colin, but more just about unblocking in general to communicate and help other people here in the group. That's what I'm curious about.
Yeah, I agree. And unblocking for me, sometimes if it's complicated, it does get a little bit more of a longer conversation. So I think that's a main point here, trying to squeeze a whole lot of stuff through a straw and misunderstanding. And how do you sort those things out with different personalities, different people with different time constraints? How do you signal back and forth that this is the right time for us to talk for 20 minutes? Later, we can talk for an hour. That was interesting, but not what I meant. Stacy definitely is a good example of misunderstandings that can be cleared up, because misunderstandings are to be expected, but how do you deal with them? And as far as the religion thing you're talking about, Josh, not to get into a religious conversation here, but I think it's the level of fundamentalism. It's not whether you know a bunch of religions, but whether you're going to come across a religion where that person says, I'm entitled to certain things over you. And if you don't listen to what I say, it's not going to be good for you. Like that's the essence of the bullying that religion, as far as having spiritual and artistic and deep meaning and, sacred numbers and all that stuff, have at it. Like I will participate or not participate as I see fit. but I'm not here to bash any of that. It's the authority and the mind control that, you know, Jazz went on to talk about. Well, there's mind control and everything. Well, that doesn't necessarily make it right. And are we moving ahead?
You could make a point and let somebody in to
Yeah. So the point is to have these conversations. Sometimes the main thing is you
Well,
might
I think
need
we're
to
doing
know.
it now. You've made a statement about religion in general.
Yes, in general.
I just want to clarify that and ask you a question. Which
Sure.
religions are you specifically referring to about being authoritative, who say that if you don't give way on some moot point, it will be bad for you?
Okay, well, here's a fun example. I had a roommate who was Catholic, and once I showed them that Wikipedia said the Pope says that evolution is not at odds with Catholicism, then he agreed with me that evolution was real, but not until then. So, you know.
That's very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the Pope did say that.
Yeah, but I'm just saying his closed-mindedness was based on what he thought the Pope says, not on the facts.
And I'm saying that your mind is closed, that you make a statement and then you counter it with a statement in the other direction.
Well, I do play thought experiments, intuition
So
pumps or
which
whatever.
religions are demanding that they be taken at face value, or it'll be bad for the people who don't do that?
I'm not criticizing religions.
You did.
Hold on, I need some adjectives here. I'm not criticizing religion's existence as such for people personally, because everybody has their own.
That's a different matter.
Right.
That's
So
like saying to
that's where I should not cross the line. But
Yeah.
when it comes to a political group trying to put in certain emergences based on their beliefs and what I would think is unsubstantiated reasons, and then they're going to tell my children or you and me or whoever, you know, that's a very simple example.
Right now, most of the governments all over the world are doing exactly that with reference to the coronavirus, and they're making guesswork. They're not taking the expert knowledge and going to using that as a meter to propose and carry out actions. They're using political power to further what I would call the capitalistic system. Okay.
Well, we do concede some
to say that
things to the
to
government,
say that
safety and
a
protection.
religion or religions deliberately ask for understanding on something, or it will be bad for people who don't give them that understanding without identifying who those what religions those are, is kind of a counterproductive accusation. And
Well,
that's
that's why
the kind of and that is the kind of accusation that you make nearly every time. I would draw your memory back to last week, where Doug had to remind you that you can't make such general accusations. Be more specific. And you're not picking up that sort of line of thought and say, who am I aiming this at? Generally speaking, specifically?
Not so much. We have to be careful because
No, not we. Colin has to be careful.
No, we all have to be careful when we're talking.
No, I don't have to be careful. I'm not careful. I'm carefree. I make a statement. I stand by it.
Should people hang out with people who aren't careful?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't agree.
Fine.
I give great credit to people who are careful, not people who are willy-nilly. Now it depends. Everything has a context.
Oh, I'm a willy-nilly now, am I?
No. Well, why don't we get back to the point? Why don't we get back to the point?
Which are provocative all by themselves.
The point is that you're talking about wicked problems and trying to squeeze them into small.
I'll tell you what I think, Colin. I think, quite succinctly, that you have gone through life for the last 45 years at least being humored by people with this when they've been talking with you and they are thinking things like, ah, he's a nice man. I won't tell him. I don't want to keep going into that direction.
Where's all this shit
Someday,
coming from?
someday he'll learn.
Where's this shit coming from? Anyway, your
It's
head?
coming from my head.
Well, please spare me.
The same kind of shit you're putting out, and you don't even realize you're being humored.
No, actually, I'm saying I want to
I've
remove.
been humoring you for over 2 years now, and I think it's time you understood you are being humored. You're being given a lot of leeway by a lot of people because they think that you will learn, and
I don't.
You don't have the memory to learn. You know, if you have,
I really. This is what I'm talking about. Keep it to yourself, Jazz. What I'm saying
I'm
is.
provoking you right now. Yeah.
What I'm saying is.
Provoke you. You start using your memory.
No, I haven't. And actually, I still haven't got an answer about the atheist Barbie at all. But that's okay.
What about the atheist Barbie? I liked her. I put her up there.
Yeah, well,
I think she's gorgeous.
I think that was a lot more. I think that was a lot more telling of your knowledge of how many religions than mine. But anyway, that's regardless of.
That Barbie was a lot more telling of my knowledge, according to Colin.
Well, I would love you to bring that. I would love you to bring that to the conversation.
And he's telling me that I did something really, really stupid.
No, I'm saying if it means something, what does it mean? And bring it to the conversation and share it with everybody, because you were quiet. You had no response.
I will tell you, you're doing exactly that. You're exploring something you wouldn't have explored had I not put that Barbie doll up.
No, I'm going back to try to cover a stink bomb, and it's a waste of time. But at the time,
you're the one who's wasting the time.
The only
I
thing
think it's bloody good. I think
illustrate
somewhere. You're thinking.
All it does is illustrate how difficult it is to ask you a question. What did that mean? And I didn't get it. That's what it illustrates.
You don't have to get it. You just have to talk about it.
Okay. Well, anyway, so
willingly or unwillingly, you're doing it. You don't realize that, do you? You say, I don't want to talk about something, and in the very next sentence, you actually talk about it.
No, well, I was just about finished. I was making reference to Josh, and I made reference also to you, and it's hard to follow what I was talking about because, again, you're triggered about these things, and I find this
I'm never ever triggered. You've got all sorts of things in your head about me.
You must be triggered because you're given an awful lot of opinions. You're given an awful lot of opinions about me.
But I personally,
you don't know me.
Girl never ever gets triggered. I might give you the impression of being triggered. I might shout at you.
The point
it doesn't mean anything.
The point being is that I find it very difficult to talk to you because you are very provocative. So I find you disruptive from my trying to make a point. That's one thing.
You haven't made any point so far.
If I challenge you, it's going to go down in flames because you're not challengeable. You don't challenge well.
Go ahead, challenge me.
Well, go back and watch the tapes. So anyway, so I think the main if we're going to have a difficult,
they don't mean anything.
If we're going to have a difficult, meaningful conversation, and in this essence where I think Josh really laid it out well, where people have a misunderstanding even of intention and tactics.
Oh, for God's sake, the only person who's having a misunderstanding is you. Get it right.
No, you can't be assuming what I'm saying without asking me what I'm saying. And then I say, and then you say, oh, is that what you meant? And then we go ahead further instead of going backwards where you're pointing your finger at me.
I've never ever said that to you, and I'm not particularly.
I can't go forward while you're pushing. I can't go forward while you're pushing me back. How's that for an analogy?
I don't know what that means.
That means I feel you push me, and I can't go forward.
Well, you make statements, and then you accuse me of doing exactly what you're doing. When I make a statement, I back it up.
I'm looking for ways that we can move forward together, and I'm asking questions to
Where do you want to go to?
the next point without having to go back
What
to a
is the
whole
next
huge
point?
lecture. If
What's
if
the
we're
next
talking
point?
about, hold on, if we're talking about something and you say, well, let me explain something to you, and you take the conversation somewhere else, I should be able to say, wait now, can we unpack that some other time? Just
You
basically
do
tell me
that
what
a
it is.
lot more than I do.
Well, it doesn't matter how much we do it. We could do it infinitely.
No, no,
but
no, not we, not we. Own your statement. You
my
just
point
made a
is,
statement and now you're deflecting again.
the point is that if you're going to have a complicated conversation, don't try to do it with hand waving on this Zoom call on Sunday or Saturday.
Well, I can't see it, Colin, because you've got your camera off. You have an advantage over me. But I don't
Well,
know what you're
that's
doing
because I'm getting ready.
behind
And
that.
I'm actually late at this. I'm actually late at this point. So, I just wanted to make the point about what Josh had said. I thought was very valuable. Also, Stacy and I have had the same kind of thing, misunderstanding, talked about it. It comes down to the person willing to lean in or thinking that they know everything and they just want to tell you. And I think you're more of the, you know everything, you just want to tell people. And it doesn't work well with me when I'm asking questions and you want to talk for a whole bunch of time. It's like, I'm just, if we were sitting on a beach and it was Saturday and I had a week and nothing to do, I'd probably let you talk for 2 hours straight before I'd even interrupt you. But that's not the case here and now. I might ask you for clarifying questions, but you know, it's, and that's what I'm saying. If we have such different worldviews or not, different motives, different intentions, and we have a topic we want to talk about, how is that possible? Especially when one of the people, in your case, I find there's an extra box that has to be checked off on the people adapter, how to deal with his provocativeness to let him know that that's not helping right now, or it is helping right now. Because I'm not saying there's a time and place in a context where, you know, interrupting, for example, can be very useful in some conversations, especially if it's active listening. Anyway, thanks everybody. Listen to my whining pettiness about all this crap, but yeah, it does come down to the fact that I think we're trying to achieve difficult conversations in small spaces and not remembering what we're talking about specifically in barn raising, and that's kind of changing, I'm hoping.
So I want to go back to something Josh said, which was that it's hard for people to admit when they don't know something, because that's a question that I tend to look at others and in my own judgment decide where they fall on that scale. And for the ones that find it easier to admit when they don't know something, I'm more comfortable having a deeper conversation with them, because to me, I take that as a signal of their personality or of their learning style. I don't know what the right words are, but for me, it means something. And I don't think you can have deep conversations when you have more than one person in the room that isn't really good at being able to say when they don't know something. I think a conversation can handle one of those people. More than one of those people, it's not going to work. That's the first thing I want to say. Second thing is, I just want to say for the record, I have never humored Colin. Colin and I have gone head to head. I've never humored him. I will say that I've adapted my style, but I've never humored him. So I want to say that. And we have come to agreements many times. What else did I want to comment on? Oh, the last thing I want to say is that as far as what Colin was saying about religion and that fundamentalism, I agree with the personality type, but I don't agree that it has anything to do with religion at all. I think it's about the people that are in that group, whatever that group may be. You know, it's more visible when we see it cloaked in religion. It's on the news. We see it a lot. We see it in a group, but it's not relegated. I mean, it's people. It could be about any topic, and you're going to have people that want to impose their views, that are very rigid, that have to keep pushing, that are self-righteous. That's anywhere. So I think I'm complete with that. Those are my comments.
Are you waiting for some sort of a retort, Stacy?
I can't hear you. What?
Are you waiting for some sort of a comeback on those three topics? Three.
Nope. Nope. I was just expressing myself. I sat very patiently, so now I'm just expressing my opinions. I mean, you're welcome to come back.
No, I will. If I think I am a no, and if he thinks that that is the impression I'm giving out, then perhaps I am a no. Yes?
I don't know what you
I have-
mean. I'm
I have-
sorry. I don't know what that word is.
Which word?
You're what? You're a what?
I know all.
Oh, know all. Know it all. Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
I know it all.
Know it all. I got it.
Okay. I take your point that if something is not known, then it's a great thing to say, I don't know that. Can you explain that to me? Rather than just continue noddy fashion.
But can I just ask you something? Do you think that my comment was directed at you?
No?
Okay, just want to clarify.
When I'm clarifying that, yes, I am a know-all, and as I said to Colin, and I wanted to get this point across to him, if I find that there is something I don't know, even when we're online here having a chat, I have Mr. Google at my disposal, amongst other search engines. But Google is quite a good meta search engine. And I can update my knowledge quite quickly, as other people do as well. So I took great pains over the last 3 decades, near enough now, to actually find out what the heck is going on. That my worldview was kind of like a rosy colored one given to me, and the actuality was much more like a venal blood color one. And I wanted to find out why that big difference exists in my mind. So I took the trouble to find out, to actually experience those experiences. And I'm still doing it now to see how we got to this stage. And the answers are not very good. They're extremely bad. The human race is such, from whichever point of view, or whichever religion, or the humanist point of view, it's eating itself. It's eating each other. Kind of like a bunch of sharks, and the big ones, that's a lot of money, makes you big, are preying on the little ones. And the minnows have no chance, or pilchards, etc. They just get gobbled up in huge shoals, huge schools, an ocean full. In fact, we've emptied the ocean. And that doesn't make me happy at all. And that is a very, very deep conversation. And I really, really want to take that conversation to those people who should be doing something about it. And I've been thinking about that for nigh on 10 years or more, 11, 12 years, approximately 12 years. And I've held back and I've held back in the vain hope that there would be, the world would come to some sort of understanding and people would start standing up. I really don't want to be shot at by other people. And I do see people who make the slightest noise and they become known as information leakers or boat rockers or whatever. They do get shot. So the whole world is running on lies, and those who make the slightest truth become known. or tortured or put in prison or some other place where they're curtailed. And I'm of the opinion that I should direct all this anger, for want of a better word, at the religious people, at the very least, at the cardinals of Christianity and Catholics, and take it from there. Because that particular bunch of people, 1.1 or 1.2 billion Christians collectively, white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, they're determined, as far as I can see, to have the whole world under their control. Russia, Middle East, Far East, China, Canada, Australia is already there. USA is already there. And the biggest navy is obviously the USA. Europe puts a lot of money into the North Atlantic Treaty Organization to show willing, and that everybody else are the terrorists and we're the peacekeepers, albeit with a bias. And I'm really serious that perhaps I should do that. Perhaps I should get out of this comfort zone that I find I'm in currently and go do it. All I need is some sort of transport. That's not hard to come by. Make appointments and go and tell them these things, that you have to up your ante. Because you are seen as one of the leaders of communities.
Who are you talking to when you say you?
Well, I did at one time try to make an appointment with the Bishop of Wolverhampton. I thought I'd start with him. And his wife answered the phone and she said he doesn't take private interviews or private conversations. And I left it at that till I met up with him at one of the meetings and I mentioned it to him and he said, oh, no, yes, you can try again. Be a pleasure to have a chat with you. So there are blockages in the way. And then there is the Cardinal of all of England. You might know his name. He's a very nice man. And obviously, the Cardinal of the Bishop of this diocese. And at the same time, there's Sikhi, there's Hindus, and there's Islam. There are all sorts of people to go and talk to. And I have been talking with at the low level, and I find that I'm not getting anywhere with that. But it was worth a try to try and work this up from the bottom up, as we keep saying. And the bottom is not moving. They're either not willing or they're unable. They have family responsibilities, all sorts of things get in their way. Whereas people who have money, those responsibilities don't exist for them. It's a completely different lifestyle. And that's a quandary I face. So yes, I am a know-all. And if that is the impression somebody has of me, it's quite accurate. I'm complete.
I want to bring it back to us as individuals because I really felt taken away somewhere that wasn't here. And when you were talking earlier to Colin, you mentioned how he says something and what he's saying is really what he should be listening to. And I want to just say that to me, that's a good generalization. I think all of us, when we're talking or preaching or lecturing or imparting our knowledge, that knowledge is also meant for us to listen to. And sometimes a lot of people I know are really doing it. They're walking the walk. And other times, which is what upsets most of us, is when we see someone who's saying it, but they're not doing it. And for me, this is the kind of thing that on the bottom, if we learn to do together by role modeling it, by making it, you know, a pleasant experience, a more pleasant experience, because we're all in it together and we're all learning. And what an idiot, I just did something really stupid. Ha, 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 we all laugh about it, as opposed to having fingers pointed at us. If we developed that kind of a culture, we're halfway there. And I don't see enough. Say it again.
I really can't be any more succinct than I already am. The conversation that triggered Colin yesterday.
It's not really about being succinct in the conversation. It really has nothing to do with Colin at all.
Who does it have to do with then?
Every single one of us at different times. I mean, I've had conversations with you where I've disagreed with something only because, not that I thought what you were saying was wrong, but I just thought that you didn't leave room for additional explanations as well. So I do take, for the things you say, and you in particular, I do believe you know what you're talking about. However, I also think that there are other things that play a role as well. And when we've talked, I felt like you've left that room. Like when I've been able to tell you what I'm thinking and you realize that it doesn't contradict with what you already know, I feel that you've stayed open to that. But that opening or that looking for, well, is there more? That's a practice too. Instead of just thinking, I have the whole thing now. Doug, you have anything to say?
Well, one learning, I think, but I need confirmation of it. Colin, in listening to you, and if I sort of transpose to first person I in a bunch of statements, you sort of take in and process the world with maps. Like that, it's not that's your thing, it's actually the way you take in the world and order it and make sense out of it.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say the maps are an indication of where I'm trying to place context and meaning. So it's sense making.
No, but I'm saying they're an extension of you. It's a very personal dynamic, but you actually need the
it's
maps.
a mode. It's a mode. It is a mode I go into when I need.
Okay. Okay. So
and it's a research and development. You can think. You know, you're not sure. Wicked problem zone, GCC area. You know,
yeah.
things that are not defined.
But you see, in the articulation of that, it can be misconstrued as a thing separate and apart, as opposed to an extension and reflection and part of how you process the world. Do you know what I'm saying?
Well,
and so
it depends it's a level of complexity.
For me,
it's
connecting
those zone or not.
Yeah, but for me, connecting those dots, that this was a key personal tool for you. And if you're frustrated in purpose in doing it, then you're frustrated in purpose.
Yes. Well,
right.
So, I think I am at odds with trying to find the right forum to participate and learning
Well, that's a
that's kind of
separate
what,
issue. That's a separate issue from
yeah.
the point I'm making, but you got the point I'm making. But I think, at least for me, that's a learning or an insight into you.
I'm very detailed, yeah, when it comes to trying to
And
sort something out. Yes.
yeah, yeah. Um, and the cognitive dissonance, the risk of cognitive dissonance, miscommunication in that, in terms of a misimpression or a reactivity that it can provoke. Jazz, you have your own version of that. The discontinuity for me is that on one hand, I do absolutely believe that you are as significantly down the road in spiritual practices as you claim. But for the life of me, I don't understand the impression of the underlying insecurity that leads to the lecturing and going on and on and on and on and on. But I think there's a little bit of the for you, that's reflexive and no more preventable than me stopping the rain that's going on right now.
No, we don't have any of like the.
I'm not sure where I'm picking all that up from. Okay, that was coming from Colin. Colin, I muted you. So those are sort of, they're cognitively dissonant vectors. On one hand, you have this self-awareness, mindfulness, understanding and sensibility, but there's this trigger and you're off to the races, and 10, 15 minutes later, you're done and complete with whatever road you went down. I don't know how to reconcile those two things. So they're of equal magnitude in terms of their ability to be misconstrued and to react to. And I'm saying that as an and to Josh's insights, which I think were brilliant. There are fundamental differences in patterns of relating to and processing information and communication between each of your gestalts and your styles and your protocols. And so this is just sort of an added data point to that. And the effect, it does sort of, flip the attention switch. It's very easy to, if one or either of you get on a longer roll, it's very easy to just sort of tune out, to disconnect, to not stay in the game. Because to follow it and to keep up is like work. And if somebody asks me whether I want to take on that level of work and I say yes, then that's on me. But if it's just done extemporaneously, it's easier to switch off. I don't switch off because I'm here for investing intention, the time and attention. So that's a commitment of my intention coming in. But it can make it really challenging. It is tiring. And I think with that I'm complete. I'm not complete. I have one more thing to say. in looking at both of the patterns that each of you, the patterns and choices each of you have made, I couldn't do it. It's just, it strikes me as exhausting. Like for me to do either one of those would just be hugely exhausting because there's a huge amount of energy involved with both of you.
And my pattern
And
is
with, and with that, I'm complete.
thank you. My pattern is dictated by Colin's pattern, in that his bolt-ons are fixed, which means I don't have to think much about it because it'll be the same bolt-ons every time. And I can pick any one of them anytime I want to. There's no particular accuracy needed there. And as you just pointed out, it doesn't stay on point. And his accusations of the protagonist are exactly what he's doing. Now, there's a statement I have made as a sort of a general comment, but directly at you, Doug. Yesterday, I made a statement which is that most of the time, this is with Fallon and others listening, most of the time we start off, doesn't matter what culture or what religion you're in, or even atheist, hello, how are you? Irrespective of language, how are things? How's it going? Oh, never mind. Usual chit chat. And it occurred to me a long time ago, way back in the 80s, mid-80s approximately. What a waste of time that is. I had some fish, I had some chickens, one hen and one cockerel and little babies and things. I didn't ask them how they were, I could tell. The baby didn't have to tell me how the baby was. So why this thing that we do, this ritual, everybody? And there's no escaping it. If you try to escape from it, if I tried to change that opening, it would be taken as disrespectful. But slowly but surely, it is changing. The conversation, especially since the social media's come on, we don't do the hello, how are you, when we're texting. It's straight into the conversation, straight to the point. 2 or 3 words, and that's it. Which is much better. Less time wasted. Better, longer, wider conversations. Cross-cultural conversations. I can see your eyes wandering.
No, actually, it's the opposite. I've noticed myself reacting recently on this point, specifically this point. If you watch any of the news channels like an MSNBC, they've all been turned into these, 4 or 5 sports commentators. Like that's the format. There's like a tidbit of news, and then there's like hours of babble, and then there's a new tidbit of news and hours of babble about the latest tidbit. So there's this pattern to it. But what's really interesting to me is the anchors turn to a new person, launch directly into a question. And 9 out of 10 times, the person that they're turning to, if they're new, if they haven't been a panelist sitting there for the last 3 hours, will open with a pause and then say, hi, good to be here. And I'm finding the sort of cold stone question opening approach rude. Like, it's like, where's the, hi, good to see you. Hi, hello. Hi, how are you?
Hmm.
And I guess maybe I'm old-fashioned, but there's like a civility in that I find lacking,
Well,
if
put
that
it
makes
from a
sense.
different point of view, that if you're an anchor, you've got people wandering in and out, and you've only got so much time to get a lot of points of view across to your audience. What are you going to do? Are you going to waste that time in the general chit chat, or are you going to cut to the chase?
There's a lot of meat and potatoes in general chit chat. My mother-in-law, Charlotte, is the queen of chit chat. And
Yeah.
if you tune in and really listen, it's a freaking oral history going back 30 years.
Okay.
And you know, I don't think most people bother listening,
Exactly.
but
So
that doesn't mean that one person's chit chat isn't my own personal
just the thing I was coming to.
NPR documentary.
So I'm very glad you brought the female gender into it, and they are pre-programmed to teach children right from day one to learn to speak and communicate. And they will repeat and carry that forward to a highly annoying level. Nothing wrong with that. It's part and parcel of the thing. The males tend to be different. Not all males, we all have our little different settings. And I, as a very busy person, didn't have time for this chit chat like the anchors. If the phone rang, hello, how can I help you? It wasn't a case of, oh, hello, how are you? Yeah, I was just sitting here and yeah, I'll pull your file out and have a look now. There wasn't time for that. And most of the time, just the voice, to hear the voice, to hear the word hello will tell you the other person's attitude and general health. If it's kind of robust, you don't need to ask, are you depressed? If it's depressed, you will know, I will know. Why are you sounding depressed today? It's something I grew out of, that it wasn't necessary, and we all did it. And if 22 of you are going to be meeting up in person, in the first 15, 20 minutes, you make a cup of tea and you're in the queue and you're making a cup of tea or coffee or whatever, getting the biscuits, and it's a sheer waste of time. And people, yes, people were annoyed because I would cut back to the previous conversation with whoever I met, and they would get annoyed because it's jogging their memory. The curate at Wolverhampton, he found it annoying as well. Just to mention one particular person without his name. Eventually, in the time of a year, 2 years, 3 years, or depending on their own memory systems, how quickly they could memorize something, people recognize me as having a different opening to a conversation. And they no longer said, hello, how are you? Sometimes they would say that and say, oh, I already know. Now, I didn't pick that up and come to it myself. I went to Jason Chang, and I think you can Google him, probably in Spain or Portugal, I can't remember. But he used to run a class, a weekend class in Redditch, West Midlands. About 93, 94, I'm going back to. And I paid to go to his class on spirituality. And he went through that. And he also went through a lot of healing and other things. And how do you know when a person is not well without having to ask? If a person is walking with a walking stick, you're already aware that something's not right. Or are you going to go for the obvious questions? But it's a kind of a test, if you like, to see how the person is perceiving what's going on around them and how helpful they can be if they just change a little bit. I can see you're not well. Is there anything I can do for you? How did you get into this mess? Is there anything I can do for you? And I could be very condescending and say that you haven't grown up sufficiently to get to that level because you're still stuck with people in that thinking frame of mind. I don't want people to think I'm rude. And that behavior would be perceived as rude. But if everybody did it, it's no longer rude.
He's gone.
And that,
I'm just waiting for my turn.
and that is the
Can
crux
you
of
mute
the
while you're
matter,
waiting, please?
is that we are not open to these suggestions. And I made a suggestion to Fallon yesterday, that's where I started the conversation, which Colin took an exception to, was to do exactly that. When you open a conversation, instead of the usual, hello, how are you? Just try to change that, as I did. You know, do you think we could go to a slightly deeper level when we meet up? And I did that with total strangers who then might think back and say, no or yes. Either answer is acceptable. And that is not being derogatory. That's not being condescending. That's just doing something slightly differently that we do every day. Okay? You know, if you see somebody who's involved in a car accident, a lot of people would want to ask a lot of questions. And when you're trained in first aid, you don't ask any questions. You start to assess the damage, how to limit the damage, how to put the person in a position where they're as comfortable as possible, get them into an ambulance and on the way. Practical is the word I'm getting at. And that's not a lecture, that's just explaining something as much and as well as I can, and that the changing of whatever we want to change is at every level, not at the levels dictated to or said by or opinionated. And it starts with you, in this case, me. So if I don't make those points of view known, not going to happen. I'm complete.
Yeah.
Stacy?
So overall, I feel the same way about chit chat. Where I disagree with Jaswinder is I'm not sure why it's on the person starting the conversation, because to me, asking how everybody is, that's inviting people to share. I think it's the responsibility of the people sharing to recognize I don't have anything really that I need to take up everybody's time with sharing. So I hope I'm not missing, you know, I was thinking about what I wanted to say in my head, but Jaswinder, to your point, there is another way that that's going to change. And that's by you modeling your part. And I'm modeling my part. I also have not been so quick to say, oh, I'm looking outside, the wind is blowing, blah, blah, blah. But if I have something like I was just upset by something, I do want to share it with you. So I think that, you know, when you talked about the feminine and what they're meant to do, if it's meant to help people to express themselves, I like the idea of say, like, you know, I will come and I'll say, how are you? Because but I have to really want to know. It's disingenuous for me to say, Joshua, how are you doing today? Unless I really want to hear, well, I have the sniffles or my head hurts. And obviously Joshua doesn't say that, but I just used his name. But I mean, I came on the other day, Jaswinda, I didn't ask you how you were. I asked you how your niece was because I genuinely wanted to know because something had come up that I was privy to. So again, I think it's the whole idea of, it's not about telling other people. Maybe if it comes up in the form of an explanation, I did this because, but to just say you shouldn't ask because it's not important, to me, that's just as bad. You know, not as bad, but I don't think it's productive. I don't think it helps anything. I'm complete.
Colin?
Okay, from the time.
There we go. There we go. Hold on, Jazz. Hold the jets. Jumping Jesus. So to reply to Doug about being so much effort put into a style of communication, I totally agree. That's why it's meant for serious conversations and ones that you're willing to sacrifice and be sincere about, not flip it and try to squish into a small segment and think that you've actually done anything more than introduce the idea that you would like to discuss something. In my mind, I think a lot of the work is to be brought back here and shared, not done here. I don't know if everybody thinks that. I'm sure there's some things that are done here. I think we did something today. So yeah, it is difficult. And when it's so difficult that you lose your track because somebody is in a different mindset, then you have to do them the justice of trying to make space for their thoughts as well, so that you don't necessarily dismiss them or run them over, possibly park them while you decide what are the pieces at play. But I think people don't recognize there's multiple pieces at play. So it is very detailed, and I think it's more tiring to try to have a circular conversation and not put the extra work in. I think it's lazy to try to, quick talk a serious conversation. So, a lot of possibilities here to grow some serious conversations and tools to help and aid that. So yeah, you're right. I am taking a mapping approach to try to hold these contexts or balls in the air, so people can give them their just due. And then after the person feels that they've explained themselves and the terms are understood within whatever context, words can change their meaning depending on context, or styles of conversation can change depending on who you're talking to or where you're talking to them. So all these rules are subjective, and I'm looking to have some understanding of Jazz, which was my point today. When I think it's going the wrong way, that's not helping me, I'm wondering if he's receptive to that, or if he's just going to continue on his diatribe of dumping this knowledge that must be shared because it must be shared. And I'm saying, well, can it be shared at a more appropriate time, and how can we bookmark that so we don't lose it? So it is taken important, and then I can tell you how ridiculous it is later once I've heard it all. Or do I have time to hear it all? Or how important it is? Something I've learned that I didn't know. Meditation is one of those things that are up in the air. Jazz did a lot about meditation, so I did map some of that out, and I got some questions about it, but it's only so important to me. The religion thing is a little more important, but I don't think we can unpack it here. So yeah, it is laborious. It is, and it is lazy to not do it, I think. Because, if you want to have a nice conversation, which I'm about to have in just a few minutes, I'm not going to pull out my maps, obviously. I don't think my mother is interested in my maps today. But, she's interested in all that other stuff, which, is something that I'm typically not sharing here. So maybe I'm at odds with some of the purposes, but I'm okay with that. And I'm not here to disrupt what other people are doing. I explained to Jazz 3 times what my point was in making my point yesterday when he was giving an opinion to Fallon. And it wasn't to contradict his opinion or to comment on his opinion to Fallon in any way, which he keeps repeating that I was in contradiction to his opinion to Fallon. No, I was picking up on something, a technique that he says that he uses, and I want to know, in my context, how we could highlight the fact that that is something on the table, and how can we deal with it, because I see it as an annoying tactic when not used appropriately. That's all I have to say about that. Thank you.
So we are officially overtime. I would like to appreciate and acknowledge both of you for staying in the game. I do hold hope and visions for the two of you figuring out how to embrace each other's stuff. When and if that time comes, I'd be happy to celebrate with you, albeit virtually, following all customs of social distancing and and prudent self-protection measures. In the meantime, I would love to invite a round of closing comments if you are motivated or moved to share.
Well, I'm just going to say goodbye, and I'm very happy that Sunday Unblocking, I think this was the most successful in terms of it was focused and clear the whole time, and it was spent on unblocking, and great job. That's all I can say is amazing job, and keep it up. And I love you guys. I'm going to go give love to my mom because it's her, Mother's Day. So love you guys, keep it up, and let's learn how to communicate better, because that's the whole name of the game. And the only thing I would say, one other thing is, there's certain times when you can give a little extra space. And I think years ago we used to do this a little better, is have a little 30 seconds when two people are not listening to each other, just give that 30 seconds or 10 seconds of just silence and create that space. And I love Colin dearly, and his brain is amazing. He's so brilliant. So give him some space to think for a second, and he'll come back with the most beautiful stuff. So, and right back at you, Jazz, whatever you need to come back, whatever that is, space always helps me, at least. So I'm just sharing that. But I really think that could do wonders when it's back and forth and you're trying to figure out what you want to say, and then you don't, and then someone said something else, and like, just the space is so nice. So that's my close. Thank you, Doug. Thank you, everyone. And sorry to bounce, but much love. Cheers.
Jazz, you're muted if you're doing parting words.
I don't
Nope.
have anything to add without detracting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Stacy? Why am I not
There was
hearing?
just,
Oh, go
no,
ahead.
because I wasn't talking. I was thinking, because what I have to say is probably a conversation on its own, but I want to leave it here because I don't want to forget it. The one thing I wanted to mention that a few people did that I think would be good if we didn't do is calling in other people's names who aren't here in whatever way. And I also want to point out that sometimes people that talk about bullying, and a lot of people do that, there's also bullying the bullier, and that's just as bad. And I think sometimes we try to use other people's names to like bolster our own case. And I want to say that I think it's inappropriate when the person's not on the call, and that I would hope we'd be more careful not to do that. And otherwise, good to see everybody. And also, when my picture goes up, I'm still here, I'm still listening, I'm usually eating or something like that.
Understood. Thank you much. Thank you, folks. Enjoy the rest of your Mother's Day.
Thank you.
Bye.